Welcome, dear subscribers and curious listeners of my channel. In every major fandom universe, strange and even downright ridiculous questions eventually begin to appear. Sometimes they sound like jokes, but out of such details real theories are born. People argue, speculate, search the books for clues, and wrestle with questions the author never directly explained. Today, that's exactly what we're going to do. I've gathered several strange, yet devilishly interesting questions about Harry Potter, and I'll try to explore them using logic and the hidden details in the books. Let's go. Number 1. The Wizard with a Gun. One of the most popular and, perhaps, the silliest questions. Why didn't anyone just shoot Voldemort? Seriously, it pops up in the comments again and again. And if we set aside the fact that this story was built as a magical fairy tale where a gun would feel completely out of place, the question is still worth discussing. Yes, imagine it. Harry pulls out a gun, fires a shot, and ends the saga. That would be something out of an action flick or an anime like JoJo's Bizarre Adventure. But in Harry Potter, it would be absurd. Now for a serious breakdown. Sure, a skilled sniper could potentially hit Voldemort, even if it didn't kill him outright. Since the Horcruxes would still need to be destroyed, it could at least return him temporarily to a bodiless form, but three major problems stand in the way. Where would you find such a sniper? Wizards don't exactly hang around with muggles, and they definitely don't learn to shoot. How would you even locate Voldemort? He never appeared in public and didn't walk city streets. And most importantly, defenses, apparition, protective enchantments, instant counterspells. For a wizard, bullets are predictable and a wand can stop them mid-air or transform them into something harmless. A clear example from the books, Ron once threw a knife at Fred, and with a flick of his wand, Fred turned it into a paper airplane. The same could easily happen with a bullet. Yes, surprise might work once or twice, but in a real war, Muggle weapons would quickly lose their edge, especially since ordinary injuries are easy for wizards to heal, while curses and hexes are far deadlier. The conclusion is simple. A gun in a wizard duel is laughable. Number 2, the child wizard problem. The wizarding world goes to great lengths to hide from Muggles. The Ministry casts illusions, erases memories of witnesses, and invents explanations for every odd event. But what about children? Young witches and wizards under 11 can't control their powers. Their magic bursts out spontaneously in moments of fear, joy, or anger. Just imagine the headaches this must cause. Think about it. How often does the Ministry have to erase the memories of teachers and classmates? Do they have special teams stationed near Muggle schools? Do they offer kids guidance for controlling magic? Or do they simply wait until Hogwarts takes over? The books never give us answers. All we know is that children under 11 aren't punished for breaking the statute of secrecy, but someone still has to clean up the chaos they cause. And here's another thought. How many times did the Ministry wipe the memories of the Dursleys' neighbours while Harry was growing up at Privet Drive? Number 3, the Horcrux battle. Now let's recall the basilisk moment. Could Harry, as a Parselmouth, have commanded the monster in the Chamber of Secrets? Tom Riddle insisted he couldn't. The snake obeyed only the true heir of Slytherin. But should we really take the villain's word for it? In truth, that scene wasn't just a fight between Harry and Tom. It was a clash between two Horcruxes, two shards of Voldemort's soul colliding with one another. So the question is, how exactly does a basilisk choose its master? By bloodline? But Riddle was nothing more than a memory at that point. Maybe he convinced the creature of his authority through Ginny. If the key really lies in the soul fragment, then Harry had just as much right to command the beast, since he too carried a piece of Voldemort inside him. But because neither of them knew the truth back then, the fight played out differently. In the end, the basilisk served Tom. But the situation remains incredibly intriguing. What if Harry had tried to give the serpent an order? Number 4, the Dementor's kiss. And finally, the darkest question of them all, the Dementor's kiss. It's a punishment worse than death. A Dementor doesn't kill the body, it sucks out the soul, leaving a person alive but hollow like an empty shell. The heart still beats, blood still flows, the body functions, but the personality is gone. Such a person feels nothing, remembers nothing. They simply exist. From this come two chilling questions. First, can memories be extracted from such a husk? After all, the brain remains intact. In theory, yes, but practice says otherwise. If it were possible, Dumbledore would have extracted memories from Barty Crouch Jr., who was subjected to the kiss by Fudge, but he didn't. That suggests memories vanish with the soul. Second, could such a husk be turned into a Horcrux? The body is alive, so technically it qualifies. But without consciousness or a soul, it might make the perfect vessel for a fragment, and then the Horcrux would gain a physical shell capable of acting. Would it become something like a new Tom Riddle from the diary? The question remains unanswered. The Dementor's kiss stands as one of the most terrifying and mysterious secrets of the universe. We know only this: it isn't death, it's worse. Number 5, who are squibs, really? Argus Filch is the clearest case. As caretaker of Hogwarts, he has no wand, yet he senses disturbances almost like a wizard would. He recognizes enchanted objects, he understands Peeves's tricks, and he even keeps a pamphlet titled Quick Spell, a correspondence course in beginner's magic. Rowling shows him as bitter, but his awareness of magic is too sharp to be dismissed. A true muggle could never notice these details. Filch may not perform spells, but he clearly perceives the magical world in ways ordinary people cannot. Arabella Figg makes the mystery deeper. In Order of the Phoenix, she testifies that she saw the Dementors attack Harry. Harry is stunned. But you're a squib! Yet she confirms, I'm proud of it. Magically powerless, she can still see what muggles cannot. That breaks the rule Dumbledore once explained, that Dementors are invisible to non-magical eyes. If Mrs. Figg sees them, then squibs are not just failed wizards. They are something else, half-bound to magic, denied its power, but not its vision. That makes them less an accident of birth and more a hidden category of magical being. Number 6, why do wands choose their masters? Ollivander tells Harry in Philosopher's Stone, the wand chooses the wizard, Mr. Potter. It's not always clear why. That moment sets the rule of the entire series. Harry's Holly and Phoenix Feather wand shares its core with Voldemort's, and this connection shapes their battles. The wand is not passive. It remembers, it resists, and it responds. When Harry's wand destroyed Voldemort's borrowed wand in Deathly Hallows, Rowling shows us that memory. The wand had loyalty, almost like a living being defending its master. The Elder Wand gives the clearest proof of this strange consciousness. Its allegiance shifts not by ownership but by power, recognizing Draco Malfoy as its master when he disarms Dumbledore, and later bending to Harry after Draco is defeated. Voldemort never truly controlled it because the wand rejected him. Ollivander explains this simply: the wand learns loyalty. A tool that can learn, resist, and even betray is not a tool at all. It is a companion with judgment, a silent partner in every spell a wizard casts. Number 7. Why do ghosts remain? Nearly Headless Nick explains it most directly in Order of the Phoenix. I was afraid of death, he admits to Harry. I chose to remain behind. I sometimes wonder whether I oughtn't to have, well, that is neither here nor there. His words confirm the theory that ghosts are the result of fear, of refusing to move on. But this raises a haunting question. If fear is enough, why don't we see hundreds of ghosts from Voldemort's victims? Surely many of them died suddenly, brutally, without peace or preparation. The Bloody Baron offers another example. His presence in Hogwarts is tied to a dark and violent past, the murder of Helena Ravenclaw. His ghostly punishment is eternal, marked by the chains and bloodstains he carries. Unlike Nick, he doesn't talk about choice. It feels less like he refused death and more like he was condemned to remain. That suggests not every ghost is self-made. Some may be trapped, bound by forces beyond their will. Voldemort's obsession with souls may provide the darkest explanation. Splitting his soul into Horcruxes twisted the natural laws of life and death. If he could anchor fragments of his own soul, what prevented him from blocking others from returning as spirits? Perhaps his killings left victims too broken to come back. Killing rips the soul apart, Dumbledore tells Harry in Half-Blood Prince. If Voldemort's magic shattered souls rather than simply ending lives, then his victims never had the chance to linger. Their silence as ghosts is not absence, it is erasure. Number 8. What happens if you break a broomstick? Harry's Nimbus 2000 gave us one of the clearest hints. In Prisoner of Azkaban, after the Dementors attacked him during a Quidditch match, the broom was blown into the Whomping Willow and smashed to pieces. The book says plainly, it was no use. The Nimbus 2000 was a mangled twig. The broom lost all its magic the instant it broke. No one suggested repairing it or using its parts again. This moment suggests that a broom, once broken, is no longer an artifact, but only wood and twine. But what makes a broom different from a wand? When Ron's wand snapped in Chamber of Secrets, it still produced unstable magic, often with dangerous results. With brooms, we never see this chaotic discharge. Perhaps brooms are enchanted in a more stable way, their spells bound to the whole structure rather than to the wood itself. If the shaft or bristles are destroyed, the spell collapses entirely. This would explain why Harry had to wait for a new firebolt rather than salvage his old Nimbus. Still, accidents must happen more often than the books reveal. A sport like Quidditch, full of crashes and bludger strikes, surely results in broken brooms all the time. Do fragments retain a trace of magic? Could they be dangerous? The Ministry may keep such cases quiet, just as it hides other magical mishaps from Muggles. If broken wands can explode, perhaps broken brooms sometimes cause accidents too, stories whispered in broom shops but never printed in the Daily Prophet. Number 9. Where does Hogwarts get its money? The Great Hall dazzles every evening with food that appears as if from nowhere, but Rowling makes it clear that the meals are prepared by house elves in the kitchens below. Ingredients must be bought or supplied somehow. In Goblet of Fire, Hermione explains, they get food ready, then it's sent up through magic to the tables. That means Hogwarts requires steady deliveries of meat, bread, vegetables, and fruit. Someone pays for this, which raises the question, whose purse covers the cost of feeding hundreds of students year after year? Professor salaries add another mystery. Teachers like Minerva McGonagall, Severus Snape, and even Sybil Trelawney are lifelong employees of the school. Dumbledore himself, though headmaster, speaks of duties and responsibilities as though his position is more than symbolic. No teacher would work without some form of payment, no matter how noble their cause. If the Ministry of Magic funds Hogwarts, it explains the link between school policy and ministerial pressure, such as when Dolores Umbridge was installed as High Inquisitor. But does the Ministry truly cover everything, including the constant repairs after battles and accidents? The state of the castle after the Triwizard Tournament suggests otherwise. Harry notices that the Quidditch pitch and its stands are repaired quickly after being destroyed for the third task. This kind of large-scale restoration would require huge resources. Perhaps Hogwarts maintains ancient endowments left by the founders, Godric Gryffindor's sword, Helga Hufflepuff's enchanted objects, Rowena Ravenclaw's diadem. If they created magical treasures of immense value, those items could have been traded, rented, or duplicated to provide income for the school over centuries. It's even possible that the school profits from its own magical research. Snape brewed advanced potions, Flitwick was a master of charms, and Sprout cultivated rare plants. Could the Ministry or St. Mungo's Hospital purchase these resources directly from Hogwarts? If so, the castle is not just a place of education, but an economic power, a quiet player in the wizarding economy. Hogwarts might sustain itself not only on tradition but also on innovation, trading knowledge and magical goods for the stability that keeps its doors open each September. Number 10. What do house elves eat? Dobby was always seen bustling about kitchens, carrying trays or sneaking food to Harry and his friends, but Rowling never once described him eating. The image is strange if you think about it. Here is a creature devoted to cooking feasts that could feed hundreds, yet not a single moment shows him taking even a bite. In Goblet of Fire, when Harry visits the kitchens, the elves swarm him with food, offering pies and puddings, but none of them touch the dishes themselves. "We is preparing food, not eating it, sir," Dobby says proudly. That line alone makes us wonder, do they eat at all? Creature presents the same mystery. In Order of the Phoenix, he hides in the shadows of Grimmauld Place, muttering curses and polishing heirlooms, but never once is he seen chewing bread or drinking wine. Even when he served Harry grudgingly, he did not join in the meals. Was this discipline? Or is it possible that their bodies simply do not require food the way humans do? Creature could live in a dusty house for years with little care for nourishment, yet his magic remained strong. If elves do eat, perhaps they survive on scraps. Hogwarts kitchens are always overflowing, and it would be easy for elves to sustain themselves without anyone noticing. But their magic complicates the question. House elves can apparate inside Hogwarts, disarm wizards without wands, and conjure meals instantly. When Dobby snaps his fingers, things happen that even a skilled wizard would struggle to perform. Could it be that their food is not food at all, but energy? The magical background of the castle might feed them in ways human eyes cannot see. It is even tempting to imagine that elves draw their strength from service itself. When Dobby is freed, he seems thinner but also more radiant, as if his loyalty gave him life. "Dobby is a free elf," he cries, his eyes shining. That cry holds power. Maybe devotion, magic, and the presence of wizards act as sustenance for these beings. If so, their meals are not in the kitchens, but in the very bonds they form. Their nourishment is magic itself. Number 11. Why are werewolves dangerous? Only at full moon. Remus Lupin was perhaps the most tragic example of a werewolf in the Harry Potter books. Outside the full moon, he was gentle, quiet, and deeply human. Yet once the moon became whole, he lost himself completely. Rowling showed this contrast to highlight how terrifying the transformation was, but the mystery remains. Why only then? If lycanthropy is a disease, why don't we see even hints of aggression during other phases? The moon seems less like a scientific trigger and more like an ancient magical key, one that unlocks the curse only when it is at its peak. In Prisoner of Azkaban, Harry sees this truth for the first time. Professor Lupin is a werewolf. Snape announces coldly, his words cutting through the great hall. Until that moment, Lupin had been a kind mentor, teaching Harry the Patronus charm. But the full moon stripped away everything. Unlike common illness, the transformation was total. His body twisted, his mind vanished, and his instincts took over. Why would nature or magic design a condition so absolute? The story of Fenrir Greyback adds another layer. Greyback prided himself on biting children, turning them into half-wild creatures who carried the curse in their blood. Yet even Greyback did not change outside the full moon. He could be savage, but he remained in human form. That suggests the curse is not just a sickness in the veins, but a spell woven into the very light of the moon. The full moon acts as a signal, a reminder of an ancient curse that no potion, except the wolfsbane, could hold back. J.K. Rowling herself gives us a hint through Lupin's fear of exposure. The transformations he underwent were terrifically painful. He kept his condition a closely guarded secret. His words suggest that the moon controls not only the physical change but the very magic of the curse. The werewolf, then, is not simply a victim of nature. He is bound to an old, dark enchantment tied to the cycle of the heavens. Without the moon, the beast sleeps. With it, the man is lost. Number 12. Why can't Muggles see Hogwarts? The great mystery of Hogwarts has always been its invisibility to the Muggle world. Rowling described it clearly in Harry Potter and the Prisoner of Azkaban, when the text explains that if a Muggle looks at it, all they will see is a ruin with a sign over it saying, "Danger, do not enter, unsafe." On the surface, this makes perfect sense. A castle filled with thousands of young witches and wizards cannot simply be exposed to any curious hiker or tourist who happens to wander through the Scottish Highlands. Yet when we pause and think about the physical reality, the enchantment grows far more puzzling than it seems. A ruin is still an object, still a structure that occupies ground and air. The road bends around it, rivers flow nearby, and if an airplane or satellite captures the terrain, how exactly does the castle remain hidden? The enchantments that cloak Hogwarts, as we know, are ancient and layered. Professors like Dumbledore often referred to them as protections older than the memory of most wizards alive. It is more than a single spell. It is a fabric of illusions, concealments, and repelling charms. Still, the question gnaws at us. If Muggles are tricked into seeing only ruins, then why do Muggle technologies, radars, satellites, or even Google Maps fail to capture any sign of a massive medieval fortress? The answer must be that Hogwarts does not merely fool human perception. It interferes with technology itself, bending the signals, confusing the sensors, forcing data to align with the illusion. This suggests a far deeper interaction between magic and the physical world than the books usually explore. Consider the example of airplanes. In our modern world, thousands of flights pass daily across the United Kingdom. Imagine a flight path from London to Inverness. Its route could very well cross above the lands that conceal Hogwarts. Wouldn't a pilot glance down and notice something unusual, a glimmer of turrets or a strange shadow? But the canon insists otherwise. No such records exist. No government inquiries were made. Instead, we must assume that any pilot sees only what the spells want him to see. Perhaps a patch of barren landscape, perhaps a trick of the clouds. The magic does not stop at vision. It manipulates perception in a way that ensures consistency. A pilot might look down at the exact location and report seeing nothing but wilderness, while his radar and instruments also show no anomaly. The implication is chilling. The spells extend into machines, weaving themselves into every possible lens, through which Hogwarts could be detected. Rowling left subtle hints of this in her world-building. Arthur Weasley, whose obsession with Muggle inventions was legendary, often commented on the strange interaction between magic and technology. "Never trust anything that can think for itself if you can't see where it keeps its brain," he once warned about Tom Riddle's diary in the Chamber of Secrets. Yet what that moment reveals is a more general truth. Magic interferes with mechanisms, sometimes causing them to malfunction. Radios go static near heavy enchantments, and electronic devices break down in wizarding environments. If that is the case, then the complex charms around Hogwarts likely emit a kind of magical distortion field, scrambling all signals, whether human sight, camera lens, or satellite transmission. The castle is not simply invisible, it is aggressively erased from any attempt to record it. But this leads us to a dangerous question. If magic can manipulate modern instruments so effectively, what would stop wizards from extending this influence on a larger scale? Could a determined group of witches alter the readings of nuclear facilities, disrupt global communication, or bend the perception of entire governments? The Ministry of Magic, of course, would never allow such interference to become obvious. The International Statute of Secrecy demands absolute discretion. Yet the Hogwarts example proves that the potential exists. If the spells that hide the school can blind satellites orbiting hundreds of kilometers above Earth, then the magical world quietly demonstrates its ability to control Muggle technology at will. Take the Marauder's map as another illustration. This enchanted parchment shows the moving footprints of every individual inside Hogwarts, even those concealed under invisibility cloaks. Harry once marveled at its precision, realizing it could display people walking along corridors in real time. If such accuracy is possible in a simple map created by 4 mischievous students, imagine what the most powerful enchanters in wizarding history achieved when concealing an entire fortress. They did not merely mask the building, they rewrote reality's presentation. To a Muggle, the map of the Highlands, the compass in the car, the GPS coordinate in a smartphone, all of it bends into compliance with the illusion. Magic is not content to deceive, it edits the narrative of the physical world. We also see glimpses of this in The Half-Blood Prince, when Dumbledore and Harry journey to the cave that houses Voldemort's Horcrux. The Sea Cave is protected by enchantments that hide it from Muggle discovery. Dumbledore remarks that many kinds of magic protect this place, implying that concealment is a sophisticated art. The same must be true of Hogwarts. When Hermione explains that Muggle-repelling charms cause non-magical people to suddenly remember urgent appointments and walk away, we see another layer of how the castle is shielded. It is not only about visual disguise, but about influencing decision-making itself. A hiker approaching the castle might suddenly feel the urge to turn back, never questioning why. In this sense, the castle warps both perception and behavior, ensuring complete secrecy. Number 13, can the dead be resurrected? The question of whether the dead can truly return has haunted the wizarding world for centuries, lingering in whispered conversations, half-forgotten legends, and forbidden experiments. In the Harry Potter books, this theme surfaces again and again, not as a simple matter of spellcasting, but as a terrifying, dangerous boundary that even the most powerful wizards hesitate to cross, when nearly headless. Nick tells Harry in The Order of the Phoenix, "You chose to come back, I chose to stay. I am neither here nor there." It becomes clear that ghosts are not life restored, but a pale shadow of existence. They are trapped fragments of souls lingering out of fear or unfinished business. This is no resurrection, it is a compromise with eternity, and a deeply sad one at that. The Mirror of Erased shows another path to the illusion of return. When Harry stares into its surface in the first book, he sees his parents smiling and looking back at him. But Dumbledore warns him, it does not do to dwell on dreams and forget to live. The mirror cannot bring James and Lily back. It can only show a vision that fulfills the deepest desire of the heart. It is perhaps one of the most cruel illusions. Because unlike a ghost, which admits its own incompleteness, the mirror can trick the desperate into believing they are face to face with the real thing. Harry nearly lost himself in that illusion, and only the intervention of Dumbledore prevented him from slipping into a dangerous obsession. Another reminder comes in the Goblet of Fire, when Harry duels Voldemort and the twin cores of their wands produce the extraordinary effect known as priori incantatem. Here, echoes of Voldemort's victims step forth, including Harry's own parents. They are not fully alive, but they are more than ghosts. They move, they speak, they give comfort and advice. Harry feels his father's hand on his shoulder, his mother whispers words of encouragement, and yet even this powerful magic only produces echoes. Shadows left behind by the spells Voldemort cast. These figures are not true resurrections, only reminders that magic can mimic life with disturbing accuracy, but cannot reproduce it. But then comes the most chilling path, the Horcrux. Voldemort, in his quest for immortality, tore his soul apart and bound it into objects to anchor himself to the mortal world. This was not resurrection, but it was defiance of death in the most grotesque form. By doing so, he became less than human, a twisted figure both physically and spiritually. When Slughorn recalls to Harry in Half-Blood Prince, "You must understand, killing rips the soul apart. The wizard, intent upon making a Horcrux, deliberately destroys a portion of his own soul. The horror becomes evident. Voldemort achieved persistence, but at the cost of wholeness. His example suggests that while resurrection may not be attainable, there are terrifyingly close substitutes that corrupt rather than restore. And yet legend speaks of one object that seemed to succeed where all else failed, the Resurrection Stone, one of the 3 Deathly Hallows. In the tale of the 3 brothers, it is said that the second brother turned the stone thrice in his hand, and his lost beloved returned. She spoke and smiled, but she remained distant, cold, as though she were separated from him by a veil. This was the most dangerous illusion yet, because it gave the promise of reunion while inflicting unbearable torment. The second brother could not bear the half-life of the woman he had called back, and ultimately took his own life to join her. The story is clear. The stone offers not resurrection, but a dangerous half-measure that tears apart the living heart. Still, the stone reappears in the Deathly Hallows when Harry uses it before walking into the Forbidden Forest to meet Voldemort. Here, James, Lily, Sirius, and Remus appear to him, walking with him, giving him courage. They are not flesh and blood, not truly returned, but their presence gives Harry strength. "You've been so brave," Lily says, and Sirius assures him, "We are part of you." This is a far cry from the desperate madness of the second brother. Harry accepts their presence as comfort, not as resurrection. He does not try to keep them. He lets them go because he knows they are not truly alive. The stone gives companionship, but not restoration. It is a tool for farewell, not reunion. If all known examples only produce ghosts, echoes, or illusions, why does the question of true resurrection remain so persistent? Perhaps because wizards, like Muggles, cannot bear the finality of death. Voldemort is the most obvious case. His entire existence is a rebellion against mortality. But even Dumbledore, wise as he was, admitted his own temptations. He once confessed to Harry that he had longed for the resurrection stone, wishing to speak again to his dead family. "I was a fool," he said. "I was such a fool." The longing never dies, even in those who understand its dangers best. What makes this question more haunting is the silence of the magical community on the subject. If such powerful objects and dangerous experiments have existed, why are there so few records? Why are discussions of necromancy nearly absent from wizarding history, as we are shown it? One possibility is censorship. The Ministry of Magic is known for suppressing dangerous knowledge. The Department of Mysteries, after all, contains entire rooms devoted to the secrets of death, time, and space. It is not impossible to imagine that any experiment approaching true resurrection would be hidden, silenced, or destroyed. The risk of destabilizing reality might be considered too great for public knowledge. Number 14. Why is the Slytherin common room underwater? When Harry Potter and Ron Weasley, disguised as Vincent Crabbe and Gregory Goyle through the Polyjuice potion, first slipped into the Slytherin common room, the image was unforgettable. The ceiling was low, the walls dark, and a strange greenish light filtered through as though the whole chamber was submerged beneath the Black Lake. In Harry Potter and the Chamber of Secrets, Rowling describes it with precision. A long, low, underground room with rough stone walls and a ceiling from which round, greenish lamps were hanging on chains. That light, however, did not come only from lamps. It seemed infused with the hue of the water pressing just beyond those walls. The decision to place this sanctum under the lake was not random architecture. It was deliberate symbolism, wrapped in secrecy and danger. Salazar Slytherin, one of the 4 founders of Hogwarts, was not a man who valued openness. His entire philosophy leaned toward exclusivity, power, and control. What better setting than the depths beneath tons of dark water to reflect the weight of his ideas? To step into the Slytherin common room is to feel the burden of concealment, the sensation of being apart from the rest of the castle above. Gryffindor Tower stretches proudly into the sky, basking in sunlight. Hufflepuff's quarters rest near the kitchens, grounded and warm. Ravenclaw's tower touches the heavens with airy views. But Slytherin? Slytherin plunges downwards into shadow, into cold stone, into secrecy. The very location tells its story. The Black Lake itself is a living shield. Within its depths roam creatures most students rarely see, merfolk with spears and haunting songs, grindylows with grasping fingers, and the legendary giant squid whose shadow occasionally ripples across the surface. To pass into Slytherin territory, you are already protected by this natural army. Who would dare attack from the outside when the first barrier is an underwater gauntlet of dangerous beings? It is not unreasonable to imagine that Salazar saw in this a natural defense mechanism, one that would make his house nearly untouchable. The lake is not just scenery, it is fortress, moat, and sentinel. The possibility of catastrophe, the walls breaking, water flooding in, is precisely what makes the location more chilling. Slytherin was no fool. If he created such a structure, he must have enchanted it with protective wards strong enough to last centuries. The danger was intentional in its presence, yet neutralized by magic. It is the psychological effect that matters. Every student who sits in that green-lit chamber knows that one slip of magic could drown them all, and yet they also feel safe because they trust in the Founder's power. Living constantly with that duality, safety wrapped in potential doom, is a perfect metaphor for the Slytherin mindset, comfort in control, but readiness for peril. Rowling allows us a glimpse of this mood through Draco Malfoy's casual attitude when Harry and Ron accompany him inside. Draco, smug and self-assured, is utterly at ease. He sprawls in a chair, speaking about his father's connections and his hatred of Muggle-borns, as though nothing in the world could disturb him. To him, the heavy walls, the lake pressing above, are no threat at all. They are symbols of superiority, the environment of the chosen. In contrast, Harry and Ron, even through disguise, cannot help but feel the alien chill of the place. This is not their home, not their element. Why under the water, though? Beyond defense and symbolism, one must consider the mystical dimension. Water, in many magical traditions, is associated with secrets, with depth, with transformation. It is in water that mirrors shimmer more darkly, and where reflections distort truth. Think of the Pensieve, with its silvery liquid surface holding memories. Think of the second task of the Triwizard Tournament, when Harry dived into the very black lake to rescue his friends from the merfolk's grasp. Water is the medium of hidden knowledge of what lies beneath perception. Slytherin, who prized cunning and secret wisdom, could not have chosen a more fitting element to cradle his house. There is also an old superstition that certain rituals gain power when conducted below water level or near underground streams. In the Middle Ages, European alchemists whispered that water carried spiritual resonance, magnifying invocations of power. If Salazar Slytherin was indeed the master of dark secrets, as legends claim, he might have placed his house beneath the lake to draw upon these unseen currents. The dim glow, the muffled silence, the faint pressure of the lake, it creates an atmosphere perfect for spells that are not meant for open air. Whether summoning serpents, as he famously did, or experimenting with forbidden charms, the founder may have crafted his space as a magical laboratory hidden from prying eyes. Students raised in Slytherin grow accustomed to the ambience. The steady, green-tinted light becomes comforting, the stillness becomes normal, yet the psychological impact should not be underestimated. Surrounded by water, isolated from the bustle of the castle above, Slytherins learn early the value of keeping to themselves. They speak in whispers, cultivate alliances carefully, and move with caution. Compare this to the boisterous, loud energy of Gryffindor Tower. The architecture itself molds the personalities of the house's members. It is not just who they are that makes Slytherin what it is, but also where they are forced to live. The Chamber of Secrets itself adds another layer. Hidden deep below the castle, built by Slytherin himself, it mirrors the same principle. Downward, hidden, submerged. When the basilisk slithered out of that darkness, it was not merely a monster, but a manifestation of Slytherin's philosophy, power lurking where no one can see, striking from below. The common room is not the chamber, yet the proximity in concept is undeniable. Both are about concealment and revelation, only when the time is right. Number 15. Why are the portraits alive in Hogwarts? The world of Hogwarts is built on enchantment, but nothing unsettles the imagination quite like its living portraits. In the Muggle world, a painting is pigment on canvas, frozen forever. Yet inside the stone walls of the castle, oil-painted faces breathe, move, gossip, and occasionally assist students in times of crisis. They are not merely decorative, they are woven into the school's daily life. Students running late might slip past a portrait that warns them of patrolling caretakers, and headmasters of the past continue to offer counsel long after their bodies lie in tombs. This curious phenomenon begs a haunting question. What truly animates these paintings? One cannot dismiss the eerie sense that portraits in Hogwarts echo something more than paint and charm. They possess memory, wit, and even grudges as though they had carried across the essence of their subjects. When Harry first encountered the fat lady's portrait, it became instantly clear that she was more than a simple guardian of the Gryffindor common room. She scolded, demanded passwords, and even sulked if insulted. The reader cannot help but wonder how a piece of canvas could display moods so genuine. Is she merely a magical simulation designed to act according to preset patterns, or does she hold a spark of the woman who once lived? The case of Phineas Nigellus Black deepens the mystery. His portrait resided in the headmaster's office alongside many others, and he was able to speak not only with Dumbledore but also with another version of himself hanging in 12 Grimmauld Place. This curious ability allowed him to transmit information across great distances. At one point, he insulted Harry, calling him reckless, much as he had once criticized students in his own lifetime. "You know, this is precisely the sort of thing I would have expected from a Gryffindor," he remarked with disdain. His sarcasm was too sharp, too personal, to be the product of a simple spell. The impression left on the reader is unmistakable. Phineas's consciousness, or something very close to it, persists in the canvas. If this is true, we must then ask what terrible or marvelous magic creates such a phenomenon. The idea that a portion of the soul could be transferred into a painting is chilling. Wizards have long considered the soul sacred and indivisible, save by the darkest of rituals. Horcruxes, for instance, are infamous because they rip the soul unnaturally, leaving behind a cursed immortality. If portraiture required a similar act, Hogwarts would be littered with fragments of tortured souls. Yet nothing in the book suggests such darkness surrounding the art of painting. Instead, portraits are treated as commonplace. They are ordered, commissioned, and painted as though their animation were the expected result of a skilled, magical artist. The alternative explanation is equally unsettling. If a portrait is not a shard of soul, then what grants it its peculiar authenticity? Consider the way portraits display knowledge of past events. The fat lady can recall when Sirius Black attacked her canvas, and she remembers her own history of guarding the common room. This continuity suggests memory, not just mimicry. A charm could teach a portrait how to act, but memory implies that something from the subject, thoughts, experiences, prejudices, has been successfully replicated. One is forced to imagine a ritual during the creation of the portrait, perhaps requiring the living subject to infuse it with words, stories, and personal recollections. Such an act would mean that a portrait is less a fragment of soul and more a magical echo, carefully sculpted to retain a person's mental essence. The difference becomes crucial when we remember how headmasters' portraits behave. When Dumbledore died, Harry was told that his portrait appeared in the office almost immediately. It could speak, advise, and participate in the unfolding war. Portraits of old headmasters and headmistresses hang in this office, Dumbledore once explained, and they can offer counsel. They were not simple memories, but advisors capable of reacting to present circumstances. This raises the possibility that a portrait grows, that its intelligence is not frozen at the moment of its creation, but continues to evolve through interaction with the world around it, So then each portrait is a strange hybrid, half memory, half independent mind. Let us not forget Sir Cadogan, the eccentric knight who temporarily guarded Gryffindor Tower. His antics went beyond any simple magical programming. He invented quests, challenged students to duels, and offered his sword in service. His personality was too unpredictable, his imagination too wild to have been scripted. In his case, one sees a consciousness that is more than a shadow, as though the paint had somehow absorbed the spirit of the man he once was. Whether or not his soul truly lingered, his existence in the castle was that of a living being. He could make decisions, cause mischief, and add chaos to the routine of students. It is instructive to compare these portraits with the moving photographs of the wizarding world. Wizard photos also display movement and personality, but their behavior is shallow, often repeating gestures endlessly. Colin Creevey's pictures of Harry showed him waving, smiling, or shifting slightly, but never holding long conversations. Hermione once explained that wizarding photos were not like Muggle ones, yet she never suggested they were fully sentient. The distinction is clear. A photograph carries a trace of life, but a portrait seems to host an active mind. This difference points again to the involvement of deeper magic in portraiture, beyond the charms that animate photographs. Another striking example lies in the way portraits cooperate with the castle itself. When Dumbledore needed to locate someone, he sometimes asked the portraits to keep watch. They could traverse frames, travel across rooms, and gather intelligence. During Harry's years at school, the portraits proved invaluable informants, forming a network of eyes and ears. This functionality suggests they are part of Hogwarts itself, bound to the building by enchantments that give them a collective purpose. They are not merely the relics of individuals, but guardians woven into the very architecture of the school. And yet one cannot escape the philosophical question. If portraits truly think and feel, what moral obligations does the wizarding world owe them? Do they suffer boredom, loneliness, or longing for their past lives? When Harry spoke to Dumbledore's portrait, it seemed wise and supportive, but was it content to be confined within a gilded frame? These beings serve without protest, but perhaps that silence masks a condition wizards have chosen not to question. To believe that a person's consciousness is imprisoned in oil and wood would cast a troubling light on the practice of commissioning portraits. The books themselves drop hints that portraits are not full people, but rather impressions imbued with knowledge. Hermione once mused that a portrait isn't a ghost, not really. Ghosts like nearly headless Nick are the actual remnants of human souls, half tethered to earth. Portraits, in contrast, lack the same sense of tragedy. They display will and wit, but do not seem haunted. If they are echoes rather than souls, then perhaps they are constructs designed to ease the living, to preserve the presence of leaders, guardians, and ancestors without truly imprisoning them. This interpretation softens the moral dilemma but does not erase it. For if they are echoes so convincing that to the observer they feel alive. We also see how portraits sometimes fail to provide deep emotional connection. When Harry faced Sirius's death, no portrait appeared to give him comfort. The only memories available came from living people and from Dumbledore's explanations. Portraits may carry quirks and habits, but they lack the full depth of love and sorrow that define a soul. Their limitations hint that while they can advise and mock, they are ultimately hollow in places where real hearts would beat. This hollowness may be the defining evidence that they are not fragments of souls, but magical simulations, complex enough to seem alive, but not truly so. Nevertheless, one cannot shake the uncanny impression, when reading about Phineas Nigellus or the Fat Lady, that something of their spirit lingers. Their speech is too sharp, their retorts too clever, their loyalties too steadfast to be mere programming. When Phineas refused to aid Harry until coaxed by Dumbledore, it was an act of personal will, of stubbornness, echoing the real man. Readers may never know whether these qualities are artificially reconstructed or genuinely transferred from the original person, but the effect is the same. The portraits compel us to treat them as beings rather than objects. In the end, Hogwarts teaches not just magic, but mystery. The living portraits are among its strangest lessons. They blur the boundary between life and art, between memory and identity. They remind us that in the wizarding world, even a brushstroke can carry eternity, and even a canvas can argue insult or comfort. Whether they are fragments of soul or the most elaborate enchantments ever devised, they remain one of the castle's greatest secrets, whispering through corridors, keeping watch in silence, and leaving readers to ponder what truly lives behind painted eyes. Number 16. Why does a phoenix reborn from ashes? Fawkes, the Phoenix of Albus Dumbledore, remains one of the most enigmatic figures in the Harry Potter saga. He appears not simply as a loyal companion, but as a symbol of rebirth and renewal, carrying within his fiery life cycle questions that extend far beyond the pages of J.K. Rowling's books. When he bursts into flames in Harry Potter and the Chamber of Secrets, leaving Harry shocked and horrified until the small, wrinkled chick emerges from the ashes, we confront one of the deepest mysteries of magical existence. Why does a phoenix burn, and what truly emerges from the ashes? Is it the same creature continuing its existence, or a wholly new being disguised as continuity? The burning of Fawkes in Dumbledore's office is not presented as tragedy, but as ritual, as natural to him as shedding feathers. Harry himself is initially terrified, believing he has somehow caused the bird's death, but Dumbledore calmly assures him, "About time, too. He's been looking dreadful for days. I've been expecting it to happen any minute." These words paint the phenomenon as inevitable, part of a natural cycle. But inevitability does not resolve the deeper riddle. If the phoenix ends its life in fire and re-emerges, is it not effectively conquering death? And if so, is this immortality bound by biology or by some ancient enchantment embedded in the creature's essence? A critical element lies in the continuity of memory. Fawkes, after rebirth, does not behave as though he is newly hatched in mind. He retains knowledge of Dumbledore, displays loyalty to Harry, and recognizes allies and enemies with wisdom earned long before his fiery collapse. If memory bridges the fire, then soul too must bridge it. But this premise raises unsettling implications. Is the soul of Fawkes simply indestructible, an immortal essence reincarnating within its own body endlessly? If so, we must consider phoenixes as beings of a different order entirely, belonging more to the eternal than the temporal world. Consider the moment in the Chamber of Secrets when Fawkes blinds the basilisk, carrying with him not only courage, but a kind of ancient intelligence. This was not the act of a newborn, fumbling chick. It was the will of a creature that had lived through cycles of fire and ash, growing wiser with each resurrection. Dumbledore later tells Harry, "Phoenixes burst into flame when it is time for them to die and are reborn from the ashes." The phrasing, reborn, suggests continuity of essence rather than replacement. It is not a death that annihilates, but a passage, a transfiguration cloaked in fire. And yet doubts remain. If we strip away the poetry and look at the phenomenon coldly, the act resembles destruction followed by creation. The body is annihilated, every feather turned to ash. A new body forms, beginning as fragile as any hatchling. How then can identity persist? If you burn a diary and write the same words again, is it truly the same diary? Or is it merely a new object with familiar contents? Likewise, is Fawkes the same phoenix, or simply a flawless copy bearing the memories and loyalty of its predecessor? Such a thought borders on unsettling, for it calls into question what it means for any being to be the same. Philosophers in the wizarding world might find in the phoenix a mirror for their own meditations on the soul. We know that the human soul is regarded as indivisible and sacred, a truth underscored by the horror surrounding Horcruxes. Splitting a soul was seen as the most vile act possible, but the phoenix offers another model. a soul that does not need splitting because it never perishes. Instead, it burns and re-emerges whole. This could explain why the tears of the phoenix heal mortal wounds, for perhaps within each drop lies a fragment of that eternal essence, untainted by decay, endlessly renewed. The comparison with Voldemort is irresistible. His obsessive fear of death drove him to dismember his soul and bind himself to earth. He sought permanence through violence, through rejection of the natural cycle. Fawkes, by contrast, embraces death as a necessity, turning destruction into the path of renewal. The very existence of phoenixes mocks Voldemort's ambition. Where he saw mortality as a prison, Fawkes embodies the possibility of immortality achieved not by resisting death, but by allowing it to be transformed into new life. Another angle is to consider whether the phoenix cycle is not a blessing, but a curse. In mythology beyond Rowling's work, phoenixes often endure endless cycles, watching centuries roll by while others age and die. Fawkes may have witnessed generations of wizards, countless wars, and endless grief. When he leaves Hogwarts after Dumbledore's death in Harry Potter and the Half-Blood Prince, it is as though he has lost the one bond that tied him to the present age. Perhaps the burden of endless rebirth is a weary one. The flames not only renewal but punishment. To live forever is to suffer forever. And what of identity? If each rebirth creates a body anew, does the soul of the phoenix carry all previous selves within it? When Fawkes sings in moments of despair, such as after Dumbledore's passing, one hears not simply the cry of a bird, but the echo of countless lifetimes. His song carries weight not because it is beautiful, but because it feels timeless, as though every rebirth has added another layer of resonance to his voice. That song may be the clearest evidence that Fawkes is not a simple creature, but one of the oldest beings in the magical world. The theme of fire must also be examined. Fire destroys, but it also purifies. In alchemical traditions, fire is the element of transformation, reducing matter to its essence and allowing the new to emerge. A phoenix embodies the ultimate alchemical principle. Death is not an end, but a purification leading to rebirth. Dumbledore, the alchemist who discovered the 12 uses of dragon's blood, surely saw in Fawkes more than a pet. He saw a living alchemical truth, a creature embodying the principle he himself sought in his study of magic and human nature. Possibility that phoenixes are fragments of something older cannot be dismissed. Perhaps they are not simply magical creatures, but manifestations of a deeper law of the universe, guardians of cycles that govern not only life and death, but the cosmos itself. If Fawkes is reborn endlessly, how old might he truly be? Centuries? Millennia? It may be that when he rests on Dumbledore's shoulder, he is not only aiding a wizard, but silently carrying memories of ages long forgotten. His wisdom, though silent, radiates through his actions. The loyalty of Fawkes also adds to the puzzle. He does not serve Dumbledore because he is compelled, but because he chooses. Loyalty that transcends rebirth suggests memory beyond simple instinct. When he saves Harry in the chamber, when his song heals despair, when he arrives at the moment of Dumbledore's greatest need, he demonstrates not merely continuity of mind, but continuity of soul. If each rebirth were a blank slate, such loyalty could not survive. The fire may erase the body, but it does not erase devotion. It is telling that phoenixes appear so rarely in the wizarding world. If they were common, their mystery would diminish. Instead, they seem to be almost sacred beings reserved for extraordinary witches and wizards. Dumbledore's bond with Fawkes is perhaps a recognition of shared wisdom, for Dumbledore too understood the need for sacrifice, the inevitability of endings. His acceptance of mortality, in contrast to Voldemort's terror, mirrors Fawkes's eternal cycle. It is no coincidence that the bird sings at his death. It is the song of one who understands. Finally, we are left with the haunting question of whether a phoenix truly dies. The flames seem final, yet from the ashes comes life. For us, death is an end. For Fawkes, it is a beginning. Perhaps this is the lesson hidden in his fiery cycle, that identity is not bound to the fragile body, but to the enduring essence that survives fire. Fawkes is not cursed nor duplicated. He is eternal, a living reminder that endings may conceal beginnings, that destruction can be the path to greater wisdom, and that immortality, when embraced through transformation rather than fear, becomes not horror but grace. Number 17. Why doesn't magic heal everything? Magic in the Harry Potter universe dazzles us with its limitless potential, but it also puzzles us with its very real boundaries. Readers often notice how quickly Madame Pomfrey at the Hogwarts hospital wing can mend what in the Muggle world would take months. Broken bones are restored overnight, fevers vanish with a potion, and even cursed burns can be soothed by carefully brewed salves. Yet the same world that can regrow Harry's arm after Gilderoy Lockhart's disastrous attempt to fix it is also the world where George Weasley remains permanently scarred, losing his ear forever after being hit by Severus Snape's Sectum Sempra curse. The question that gnaws at thoughtful fans is why? If magic can achieve what Muggle medicine cannot even dream of, why does it falter in the face of certain wounds? To understand the problem, one must first revisit the famous scene in Harry Potter and the Deathly Hallows when George is struck by Snape's spell during the flight from Privet Drive. The narration is merciless. The ear was gone, there was no blood at all. The twins' attempt at humour cannot conceal the grim truth. It was not an ordinary wound, but a magically cursed one. Later, Molly Weasley tries desperately to heal him, but to no avail. George will forever live with that absence. This single example reveals something profound about the magical universe. Ordinary injuries can be fixed because they are disruptions of flesh and bone, but when dark magic inflicts the damage, it becomes woven into the very essence of the victim, as though the spell reshapes reality itself, locking the injury into permanence. The case of Sectum Sempra had already shown its dreadful nature when Harry cast it on Draco Malfoy in The Half-Blood Prince. The wounds tore at Draco's body as though an invisible sword had slashed him open. Snape arrived in time to save him, using counter-curses and specialized healing techniques, but even that required skill and immediate action. The scars remained faintly visible on Draco later, suggesting that magic can only push against the curse, never fully erase its mark. Here lies the first key to our strange question. Magic is not omnipotent, especially when confronted with other magic. Just as Muggle science cannot undo radiation poisoning, entirely, wizards cannot unravel the deepest threads of dark curses. Even the miraculous Skelegro potion, which regrew Harry's bones after Lockhart's spell vanished them, points to these limits. Regrowth is possible, but regeneration in cases of cursed mutilation is not. The ear is not a simple bone structure to reassemble, it is a complex organ. More importantly, it was annihilated by a dark spell, meaning that its destruction was written into the magical laws of cause and effect. The Weasleys' acceptance of George's condition demonstrates an uncomfortable truth for readers. In the wizarding world, as in ours, there are lines that cannot be crossed. The magic that makes Quidditch injuries a temporary inconvenience is powerless against the curses of true darkness. Dumbledore himself often hinted at such boundaries. In The Philosopher's Stone, he tells Harry that, to the well-organized mind, death is but the next great adventure. This line resonates because it admits a weakness in wizardry. Death cannot be undone. Yes, Horcruxes and the Resurrection Stone create illusions of cheating mortality, but they are distortions, not true healing. The natural order is stronger than spellcraft. If death itself resists magic, then it is only logical that there are gradations of wounds and diseases that resist it too. George's ear is not just a missing organ, it is a symbol of the irreversible. When Lupin explains werewolf bites, he too underscores the frightening boundary between what can be cured and what cannot. "There's no cure," he tells Harry in Prisoner of Azkaban. Wolfsbane potion mitigates the transformation's violence, but it does not remove the condition. Again, the mark of dark magic, this time a curse inflicted through blood and bite, becomes indelible. This example broadens our view. Even illnesses in the wizarding world are subject to limits. Some can be erased instantly, others can be endured but never eliminated, and still others, like lycanthropy, fundamentally alter life forever. Here we see that magic is not a panacea, but a tool that is often overwhelmed by ancient, cursed afflictions. Consider also the story of Frank and Alice Longbottom, tortured into madness by Bellatrix Lestrange's Cruciatus curse. At St. Mungo's, Neville visits them and offers them sweets, but his parents no longer recognize him. Despite the advanced magic available in the hospital, despite the presence of healers who have likely seen everything, nothing can restore their sanity. A single curse destroyed their minds in a way no potion or charm can reverse. Here the cruelty of dark magic collides with the fragility of the human spirit, and the limits of wizard medicine are starkly exposed. Magic can heal the body, but the soul and the mind, once shattered, often remain broken. The story of Bill Weasley's attack by Fenrir Greyback echoes the same theme. Although Bill is not bitten, Greyback's feral assault under the influence of the full moon leaves permanent scars. Madame Pomfrey treats him, but she confesses he'll always be a bit wolfish. This admission suggests that magical injuries sometimes cross into a liminal space, neither fully curable nor fully transformative, but locked in between. Bill's face remains forever marred, his tastes altered toward raw meat. Magic mitigates, but does not erase. Even among the strongest and most knowledgeable healers, limits prevail. What about blindness, deafness, or congenital conditions? The books never give full detail, but glimpses appear. In Order of the Phoenix, when Arthur Weasley is attacked by Nagini, his wounds bleed stubbornly because of venom mixed with dark magic. Even though he is saved, it requires painstaking treatment at St. Mungo's, not instant fixes. Later, in the hospital, Harry observes patients with bandaged eyes, with spells gone wrong, with diseases still gnawing at them. This is no sanitized utopia of medicine. Wizards can suffer just as muggles do, albeit for different reasons. Some problems are simply out of reach, regardless of magic's brilliance. The question then becomes philosophical. If magic has boundaries, who set them? Rowling never gives us an explicit law of magical healing, but the implication is that the universe itself enforces balance. Magic is powerful, but not divine. It can bend flesh, mend bones, soothe pain, and sometimes reverse accidents. But when wounds are tied to curses, to evil magic, or to the fundamental fabric of life and death, magic falters. George's missing ear, Lupin's condition, the Longbottom's madness, these are reminders that even in a world of spells, suffering endures. Without these boundaries, the story would collapse into a fairy tale where consequences vanish, where Voldemort's killing curse could be shrugged off with the right potion. A fascinating layer is added by the idea of magical permanence. Some spells are designed to leave lasting effects. The dark mark branded on the arms of Death Eaters is not removable by ordinary magic. Likewise, the unforgivable curses inflict not just temporary harm, but deep, irreversible wounds. This permanence is part of their terror. Healing cannot cross that line, because the magic itself was written to defy undoing. The rules of spellcraft dictate that what has been made permanent can only be endured. This is why Molly Weasley's gentle touch could never restore George's ear, and why Neville's parents never returned to sanity. Even within Hogwarts, where healing appears easy, we see hints of resistance. Harry's scar itself is a living wound caused by the most powerful curse of all, the killing curse. Dumbledore explains that it left him with a connection to Voldemort, a wound deeper than flesh, one that no healer could touch. The scar burns, aches, and bleeds in visions, and no charm could suppress it. If ever there was proof that magic does not heal everything, it is written on Harry's forehead, a reminder carried every day that power has boundaries. There is also a moral element. Magic's failure to heal everything may exist to remind wizards of humility. Dumbledore warns Harry many times that the quest for power without limits leads only to ruin. Voldemort sought to conquer death itself, but in doing so, he lost his humanity. If every wound, every illness, every curse could be reversed, wizards would see themselves as gods, untouchable and eternal. Instead, George's missing ear and Lupin's scars force them to live with imperfection, to accept mortality. These permanent marks anchor the magical world to something profoundly human. Perhaps that is why Rowling chose to leave these examples unresolved. They are not oversights, but deliberate choices. They enrich the narrative by ensuring that victory over Voldemort is not a matter of finding the right healing charm, but of courage, loyalty, and sacrifice. If magic could heal everything, Harry's story would lose its stakes. But because it cannot, the battles matter. George's laughter, even after losing an ear, carries weight because it comes from resilience, not restoration. Neville's quiet devotion to his parents shows love in the face of hopelessness. Lupin's bravery shines because he knows he will never be cured. In the end, the wizarding world mirrors our own more than we first think. Medicine, whether magical or muggle, is a dance with possibility and limitation. There will always be victories like Harry regrowing bones and tragedies like George's mutilation. The strange question, why magic does not heal everything, is answered not with a neat rule, but with a truth that bridges both worlds. Magic, like life, is bound by laws greater than itself. And it is within those boundaries that the characters' humanity, their choices, and their courage truly shine. Number 18, why don't wizards use magic in sports? The first thing any reader notices when opening Quidditch Through the Ages is how much effort was invested in taming the chaos of the sport. The game, in its earliest forms, was wild and unregulated. Players would throw hexes, summon whirlwinds, or curse an opponent's broom to send them spiraling into the ground. Rowling's fictional historian Kenilworthy Wisp describes ancient matches as more of a battle than a sport. It is here that we see the seed of the strange question that continues to haunt fans. Why, in a world so deeply saturated with magic, does organized sport deliberately shun the very tool that defines wizard kind? One need only look at the Hogwarts matches to see how fiercely rules are guarded. Madam Hooch, the ever-stern referee, blows her whistle at the faintest infraction, ensuring no wand is drawn during play. Yet in a universe where a wand can conjure shields, propel bodies faster than any broom, and hex an opponent into unconsciousness, the restriction seems almost unnatural. After all, wizards rely on spells for nearly every aspect of their daily lives: cooking, cleaning, transportation, even communication. Why should sport be the one sanctuary stripped of spell work? The answer seems to rest partly in history. Wisp recounts in his compendium that during the 11th century, wizards in the marshlands of Quidditch used every form of magical sabotage imaginable. A seeker who enchanted his eyes to track the golden snitch found himself blinded when counter-charms were hurled against him. A beater who hexed the opposing team's bats had his own broom turned to stone mid-flight. These battles often ended in severe injury or death, and the Ministry of Magic, still forming its first departments, was forced to intervene. The decision to ban magic in play was not born of whim but of necessity, an attempt to turn slaughter into sport. There is also the simple truth that magic itself is unpredictable. A charm cast in the adrenaline rush of competition can rebound disastrously. We have seen even the most skilled witches and wizards falter under stress. Think of Professor Lockhart in Chamber of Secrets, who bungled a simple reparafage and left Harry without bones in his arm. Imagine such recklessness on the Quidditch pitch, where players fly at breakneck speeds 30 meters above the ground. The danger would not merely be doubled, it would become catastrophic. Rules exist then not merely to preserve fairness, but to prevent the crowd from watching a bloodbath rather than a game. Consider the Triwizard Tournament as a counterexample, for here magic was explicitly permitted. Each task brimmed with spells, enchantments, and defensive charms. The second task in the Black Lake forced champions to rely on advanced magical solutions. Harry used gillyweed, Cedric employed a bubblehead charm, Fleur attempted a transfiguration. Yet even in this arena, designed to showcase magical prowess, the line between contest and calamity blurred. Fleur was incapacitated by Grindylows, Cedric nearly lost his hostage to the Merpeople, and Harry himself would have drowned without Dobby's last-minute intervention. The tournament became notorious not because of skillful dueling, but because it bordered on lethal spectacle. Perhaps Quidditch's decision to exclude magic reflects the community's attempt to avoid repeating such reckless excess. There is also the matter of integrity. A sport played with magic invites not only skill but trickery, bribery, and hidden enchantments. How would one referee detect an underhanded Confundus charm cast to befuddle a keeper at the critical moment? Even Dumbledore himself admitted that subtle jinxes could be almost impossible to trace. In Half-Blood Prince, Katie Bell fell victim to a cursed necklace intended for another. The incident highlighted how easily dark magic can slip past suspicion. Now imagine a stadium filled with thousands, each wand potentially influencing the outcome of a game. Fair competition would dissolve into chaos. The personalities of famous players remind us that the spirit of Quidditch thrives precisely because it demands raw courage rather than spellcraft. Oliver Wood, the Gryffindor keeper, once lectured his team, "We're going to train harder than we've ever trained before." His obsession lay in drills, precision, and physical endurance. Wood never once dreamed of enchanting his gloves to repel the quaffle. His pride came from skill, not spells. To allow magic would strip away the essence of what Quidditch celebrates: agility, bravery, and unyielding determination. Yet the question persists: would magic not make the game more spectacular for the spectators? After all, wizarding culture thrives on displays of wonder. The Yule Ball shimmered with enchanted snow that never melted. The Weasley twins' fireworks dazzled the Great Hall with dragons and Catherine wheels. Why not permit players to enhance their moves with brilliant sparks, protective shields, or bursts of flame? The answer, again, circles back to danger. As Arthur Weasley warns Harry in Goblet of Fire, "Never trust anything that can think for itself if you can't see where it keeps its brain." A charm in the air is precisely that: unpredictable, self-propelling, and liable to strike unintended targets. Stadiums filled with families cannot risk an avalanche of rogue enchantments. Some fans argue that the broomstick itself is already a magical tool, so why not extend this logic further? The firebolt, for instance, was engineered with cutting-edge enchantments that allowed acceleration from 0 to 150 miles per hour in 10 seconds. The Nimbus series before it also relied heavily on spellwork. But here lies the distinction. The broom's magic is standardized, regulated, and identical for all players. Individual spellcasting, on the other hand, depends on the witch or wizard's ability, concentration, and intent. The broom levels the playing field, the wand distorts it. We might also view the ban on magic as a cultural safeguard. Wizards, though they live apart from muggles, constantly risk exposure. The International Statute of Secrecy, enacted in 1692, reminds them to conceal their powers. In this context, Quidditch becomes not merely a sport, but a form of controlled self-expression. It demonstrates how wizards can channel competition, passion, and excitement without relying directly on the full, destructive force of spellwork. It is a reminder, even to themselves, that magic is a gift to be tempered, not flaunted recklessly. The history of the bludger illustrates how perilous magical interference can be. In Chamber of Secrets, Dobby enchanted a bludger to target Harry relentlessly. The result was catastrophic. Harry's arm shattered and the match nearly ended in disaster. This was a single spell cast on a single ball. Multiply such interference across 14 players, 4 balls, and tens of thousands of spectators, and the sport collapses into uncontrollable pandemonium. The incident proved once and for all that outside magic was intolerable. It is also revealing that Hogwarts students themselves respected these rules with surprising loyalty. Even Fred and George Weasley, notorious for mischief, confined their wizardry to joke products and fireworks rather than breaking the sanctity of Quidditch matches. Their mischief knew no bounds, yet, when it came to the pitch, they played with bludger bats rather than wands. This respect underscores how deeply the community has internalized the belief that sport must remain separate from sorcery. Hermione Granger once observed, "Just because you've got the emotional range of a teaspoon doesn't mean we all have." Her words, though aimed at Ron, reflect a broader theme. Emotions cloud judgment. Sport is rife with passion, and passion corrupts magic. Anger sparks curses, fear breeds protective hexes, and ambition tempts foul play. The absence of wands on the field is less about denying talent and more about preventing the explosive marriage of adrenaline with incantation. Quidditch thrives on raw human impulse precisely because wands are absent. At its heart, then, the ban is paradoxical. Wizards, who pride themselves on spellcraft, deliberately tie their own hands for the sake of play. But in doing so they reveal something profound, that not all aspects of life are best improved by magic. Just as wizards enjoy tea, chess, or music without enchantments, so too they cherish a game where victory depends not on incantations but on spirit, reflex, and teamwork. Quidditch becomes the rare moment where witches and wizards prove to themselves that they are more than the wands they wield. And so the strange question finds its answer in layers of history, culture, and survival. Quidditch without magic is not a contradiction but a triumph of restraint. It acknowledges that the greatest danger to wizards has never been the absence of spells but their overuse. The pitch becomes a place where magic exists only in the broom beneath one's feet, and the balls that soar through the air, leaving the rest to human grit. That, perhaps, is the truest spectacle of all. Number 19. What does the Forbidden Forest hide? The Forbidden Forest has always been painted in shadows, both in J.K. Rowling's prose and in the minds of readers who dare to picture what might stir among its endless trees. Officially, the grounds of Hogwarts end at its edge, yet the forest seems to stretch far beyond the boundaries of the school, a vast sea of black trunks and whispering leaves. We are told in Harry Potter and the Philosopher's Stone that students are not allowed to enter the Forbidden Forest, and that alone plants a seed of unease. What is it about this place that warrants not only a rule, but a kind of superstition, as if even the teachers themselves respect forces that cannot be explained? The spiders, the centaurs, the unicorns, these are only fragments of its story, glimpses of something older and much more secretive. When Harry first entered the forest during his detention in his first year, guided by Hagrid, and carrying a lantern that shook with his fear, he stumbled upon the silvery blood of a unicorn. The image remains one of the most haunting in the series. It is not merely the death of a pure creature that makes the moment so heavy. It is the location. The unicorn, so symbolic of innocence, was brought down inside the forest, its sacred blood staining the ground that was already home to mysteries. Firenze tells Harry, "The blood of a unicorn will keep you alive, even if you are an inch from death, but at a terrible price." The forest here seems almost complicit. Aegis? Stage chosen for a ritual older than Hogwarts itself. Voldemort's parasitic existence clung to the shadows of these trees, as though he knew this was a place where dark magic could flourish unnoticed. Centuries before Harry's time, the forest may already have been a refuge for forbidden practices. The founders of Hogwarts, particularly Salazar Slytherin, are often imagined to have kept secrets hidden from one another. Could Slytherin have buried something in those woods, something that even Godric Gryffindor did not know? The mere presence of giant acromantulas like Aragog, who admits that Hagrid released him there as a young spider, hints that the forest tolerates the unnatural. Acromantulas are not native to Scotland. Their survival suggests that the forest is more than just shelter. It is almost protective. When Ron panics at the sight of them in Chamber of Secrets, his terror is not only about spiders, but about the sense that they belong there, as if the forest welcomes creatures of nightmare. The centaurs, too, are not simply characters, but guardians of a deeper truth. They speak in riddles, interpreting the skies, yet they never leave the forest. Firenze warns Harry about the stars, about the flow of fate, and his herd shuns him for interfering in the matters of humans. But why are they so bound to this place? Why do they treat it as sacred ground? It is tempting to believe the forest is their temple, an ancient ground where the heavens and the earth meet in ways that wizards, with all their spells, cannot control. The way Bane rebukes Firenze, we are not sworn to set ourselves against the heavens, feels less like dialogue and more like liturgy, as if the forest itself demands their loyalty. The forest magic is not only in what lives, but in what is hidden. Dumbledore, a man who knew more secrets than most, never attempted to cut it down, never sought to drain it of danger. He could have ordered the centaurs moved, the spiders eradicated, the thestrals relocated. Instead, he left it wild. One must ask why. Dumbledore, who was quick to intervene when magical boundaries were crossed, permitted the forest to remain untouched. Could it be that he knew the trees themselves were old enough to remember times before Hogwarts? Their roots might coil around ancient stones, the remnants of druidic circles or lost magical settlements, if the castle was built as a beacon of learning. The forest may have been left as its counterbalance, a reminder that magic is not just taught, but born in wilderness. Harry's encounters with the Thestrals open another dimension of this riddle. These spectral horses, visible only to those who have seen death, live freely in the forest. They are not hostile, nor are they entirely tame. They represent the liminal, the line between life and death. That they choose the forest as their home feels deliberate, as though the place itself is an in-between world. The forbidden forest in this reading is not merely dangerous but liminal space, a border where Hogwarts meets something far older than human magic. To step inside is to risk being seen by forces that measure time in centuries, not terms and exams. And then there is Grawp, Hagrid's half-brother, a giant hidden within the forest, a secret even Hagrid struggles to control. His presence suggests that the forest is not only a sanctuary for beasts but also a hiding place for those too dangerous or too strange for the wizarding world. Giants had been hunted nearly to extinction by Harry's time, yet here was one living within walking distance of the school. Why was no ministry official clearing him out? Because perhaps even they feared the forest's wrath. It is not impossible to think that the ministry had its own records, reports of aurors who ventured too far into the woods and never returned. The forest is not passive. Rowling's description often makes it feel alive. The trees are not only background, but characters, twisting, clutching, hiding. The sense of being watched is constant. When Harry and Draco stumbled into the Centaurs in their first year, the fear was not only about being caught, but about being judged by something older, something that did not recognize the laws of Hogwarts but its own. The darkness there is not empty, it presses in full of secrets. The phrase "forbidden forest" is not just a warning from teachers, but a recognition of the forest's will. It forbids itself. Perhaps the greatest clue to its nature lies in its role in Harry's final moments before Voldemort. In Deathly Hallows, Harry walks into the forest to sacrifice himself. The place becomes a crucible where life and death meet, where courage is tested. It is not coincidence that this moment unfolds there. Surrounded by the shades of his parents, Lupin and Sirius, Harry feels the weight of sacrifice. The forest here becomes not only a physical space but a stage for destiny, echoing the role it played since his first year. The forest does not simply contain events, it demands them. It is where truths are revealed, where choices are laid bare. One wonders if the forest might itself be conscious. Not in the simple way of a magical creature, but in the deep, primeval way of old magic. Perhaps it is bound to the land, an ancient spirit, similar to how the Whomping Willow reacts violently to trespassers. The Forbidden Forest could be the grander version, a living organism whose purpose is to guard the balance between magic and nature. If so, then Dumbledore's decision to leave it intact was not negligence but respect, even fear. He understood that Hogwarts thrived not only because of its classrooms and teachers, but because of the unseen pact with the land it stood upon. Consider also that the forest is never mapped. The Marauder's map, a tool so powerful that it charts every corridor of the castle, does not extend into the forest. If James Potter and his friends, notorious for exploring every inch of Hogwarts, never drew it, the reason may not have been lack of curiosity, but impossibility. Perhaps the forest cannot be mapped because it shifts, or because it refuses to be known. The paths change, the trees move, and what is found once may never be found again. This resistance to human control makes the forest not just forbidden, but unknowable. Hermione, the most logical of the trio, always treated the forest with suspicion. Her fear was not only of the creatures, but of the unpredictability of magic within. When she read about dangerous beasts, she catalogued them. But the forest offered no catalogue. Its unpredictability was its true danger, and even she, with her hunger for knowledge, preferred to leave its mysteries unsolved. This silence from a character defined by questions says more than any description. The forest does not yield answers. What then is buried beneath its soil? If one entertains the idea that the founders used the forest as a vault, the possibilities are chilling. Helga Hufflepuff, known for kindness, might have left protective charms to nurture creatures. Rowena Ravenclaw, whose diadem was hidden elsewhere, might have experimented with enchantments that altered perception, making the forest itself a maze of illusions. And Slytherin, obsessed with secrecy, might have seeded it with curses that no one has yet survived to describe. Even if none of this is canon, the forest leaves room for speculation, precisely because it is never fully illuminated. Rowling chose to let it linger in half-darkness, a literary decision that makes it all the more unsettling. For every answer the forest offers, it raises two new questions. The acromantulas raise questions about migration. The centaurs raise questions about prophecy. The thestrals raise questions about death. Each revelation is not a closure but an opening, an invitation to wonder what else is hidden. Perhaps that is the forest's true secret. It resists completion. In a series where so many mysteries are solved, from the identity of the Half-Blood Prince to the truth of the Deathly Hallows, the Forbidden Forest stands as the one enigma that remains unsolved. In this way, the Forbidden Forest becomes more than a location. It is the embodiment of mystery itself, a reminder that in the world of Harry Potter, some questions are not meant to be answered. To step into its shadows is to confront the limits of knowledge, the reality that magic is not only a set of spells but a living, breathing unknown. That is why it lingers in the reader's imagination, not as a backdrop but as a living riddle, whispering that what lies beyond the first row of trees may never fully be revealed. Number 20. Why can't you apparate inside Hogwarts? The rules of Hogwarts often seemed mysterious, even contradictory, but few created as much quiet speculation as the ban on apparition within the castle and its grounds. The books make this fact clear from the beginning. In Harry Potter and the Goblet of Fire, J.K., Rowling writes, "You can't apparate inside the Hogwarts grounds. How often do I have to tell you?" Hermione snapped at Harry and Ron when they wondered about escaping a dangerous situation. This line captures the rigidity of the rule. No matter how skilled, no witch or wizard could simply pop in or out of the castle at will. It was as if an invisible dome encased the entire school, sealing it from one of the most powerful forms of magical travel. But this prohibition was not merely a trivial inconvenience. It held deeper implications for safety, tradition, and even the very nature of Hogwarts itself. When Professor Albus Dumbledore allowed apparition lessons in Half-Blood Prince, the text reveals something fascinating. Dumbledore temporarily lifted the enchantment, and suddenly the Great Hall became a testing ground for magical teleportation. This means the restriction was not an immutable law of nature, but an enchantment woven into the castle's protective fabric. If the headmaster could switch it off for a few hours, then it was not absolute. The students struggled to master the technique. Remember Neville's disastrous attempt that nearly left him with only half his body, proved that the prohibition was suspended but only in chosen areas. In this moment, readers realized the ban was not a permanent impossibility but a carefully managed safeguard. This raised a new question. If Dumbledore could adjust the protection, why was it ever applied so universally and strictly? The most obvious explanation is security. Imagine, for example, if Death Eaters could simply apparate into the Gryffindor common room. The sanctity of Hogwarts as a fortress would vanish instantly. In Deathly Hallows, when the castle was transformed into a battlefield, the protections against magical entry became crucial. Voldemort's forces could not simply teleport into the headmaster's office or the dormitories. they had to breach the walls through siege. The fact that the ban held even under immense magical attack showed how essential it was to the school's survival. Apparition is quick, stealthy, and dangerous when wielded by enemies. By forbidding it entirely, Hogwarts created an unbreachable bubble, ensuring that only those who passed through the gates, the bridge, or the secret tunnels could gain entry. Yet while security is a convincing reason, it also raises a counterpoint. Why could the enchantment not be selective? Could it not recognize the magical signatures of professors and allow them alone to apparate within the grounds? This idea seems logical, but Rowling's world rarely deals in purely mechanical logic. Hogwarts is not described as a machine programmed to follow conditions, but as a place of ancient magic, layered and alive. In Chamber of Secrets, Dumbledore says, "Help will always be given at Hogwarts to those who ask for it." The wording suggests the castle itself has intent, or at least a mysterious responsiveness to human need. If Hogwarts is more than stone and spell, then its rules may not bend to simple human categories like professor or student. Tiki, the enchantment may stem from deeper roots, from the founder's own vision of an impregnable sanctuary, one that applies to all without distinction. Another way to understand this rule is through comparison. At the Ministry of Magic, apparition is possible but tightly controlled by anti-apparition jinxes in certain departments. The difference is telling. The Ministry is a bureaucratic institution built by wizards for wizards, and so its protections can be adjusted by policy. Hogwarts, on the other hand, was established by Godric Gryffindor, Helga Hufflepuff, Rowena Ravenclaw, and Salazar Slytherin 1,000 years earlier. They did not design it as an office, but as a stronghold for children. Their enchantments are described as ancient, enduring, and beyond the control of ordinary wizard kind. When Arthur Weasley explains in Order of the Phoenix that Dumbledore's got style when it comes to protective spells, he is speaking of a wizard who can enhance but not undo the deep foundation of charms laid centuries earlier. The total ban on apparition fits this picture, a sweeping, absolute measure beyond the capacity of even the cleverest headmaster to customize at whim. The inconvenience this creates is obvious. Imagine Professor McGonagall racing across the castle from Gryffindor Tower to the dungeons during a crisis. Apparition would cut that journey to seconds, yet she must sprint, relying on stamina rather than magical transport. And yet this inconvenience is part of the system's strength. If professors were allowed to apparate, enemies might find ways to disguise themselves, mimic authority, or subvert recognition charms. Voldemort, a master of deception, could exploit such loopholes. By ensuring the ban applied equally to everyone, Hogwarts maintained a clean line of defense. No apparition. Full stop. This rigidity, though frustrating in peaceful times, was the reason the school withstood centuries of threats. But the question lingers. Why, then, could Dumbledore lift the ban temporarily? This suggests that while the foundation of magic is fixed, there are authorized overrides. Perhaps the enchantment recognizes authority not as a title, but as a deeper magical bond between the headmaster and the castle. Dumbledore is repeatedly described as uniquely tied to Hogwarts. His phoenix, Fawkes, comes to his aid within its walls, and the Sorting Hat answers his call in the Chamber of Secrets. The castle's defences may respond to his will in a way they would not for others. When he allowed apparition lessons, it was not a matter of reprogramming a system, but of persuading the castle itself to relent for a short while. This makes the image of Hogwarts as a living, breathing entity more vivid, one that yields only to those it accepts as its guardians. Evidence for this living quality appears in subtle details. The staircases move of their own accord, seemingly with personality. The Room of Requirement provides exactly what is asked for, but only to those who truly need it. Even the portraits act with agency, carrying messages, gossiping, and guarding doorways. These features suggest the castle is not merely a container of spells, but an active participant in the story. If so, then the ban on apparition may not be a technical enchantment at all, but a choice made by the castle's will, enforced tirelessly over centuries. The founders may have imbued Hogwarts with an essence that makes its protections indistinguishable from its identity. To apparate in Hogwarts would be to violate Hogwarts itself. And so the magic refuses. Consider the moment in Deathly Hallows when the protective enchantments around the castle collapsed under Voldemort's assault. The Death Eaters did not apparate inside, they smashed their way through because the ban still held. The image is striking, a castle surrounded by magical fire, giants and curses, yet the invisible barrier against apparition remained intact until the walls themselves cracked. This suggests the ban was one of the strongest layers of defense, deeper even than stone. If the rule had been adjustable by human convenience, it might have collapsed under strain, but because it was absolute, it endured until the very end. This absolute quality adds to the aura of Hogwarts as a place where normal wizarding rules do not apply. Time behaves differently, as seen in the use of the Time Turner. Space bends with staircases shifting and rooms appearing. Magical energy saturates every corridor. Apparition, a spell that requires precision, control, and calculation, may be fundamentally incompatible with this chaotic living architecture. To attempt to apparate might risk splinching even the most experienced wizard. Perhaps the ban is not only protective, but necessary, shielding inhabitants from the dangers of miscalculated magical transport inside a castle that refuses to stay still. There is also a symbolic layer. Apparition represents independence, mastery, and adulthood. It is no accident that only students over 17 are allowed to learn it legally. By prohibiting it at Hogwarts, the castle reminds everyone, professors included, that this is a place of learning, not a place for shortcuts. Movement through the castle requires effort, time, and awareness of its shifting geography. The ban reinforces Hogwarts' character as a space where magic is powerful, but also disciplined. It humbles even the greatest wizards, reminding them that here, the castle sets the rules. Dumbledore himself seems to embrace this humility. When Harry once asked about the inability to apparate, Dumbledore did not lament the restriction, but spoke of it matter-of-factly. He was content to operate within the castle's will, trusting it as an ally rather than trying to bend it to his convenience. This attitude underscores the larger theme of Rowling's work. True power lies not in domination, but in cooperation with forces greater than oneself. By accepting the apparition ban, the staff and students accepted the guardianship of Hogwarts, acknowledging it as more than stone, more than history, but a partner in their safety. Specific examples illustrate how this ban shaped events. When Dobby rescued Harry and his friends from Malfoy Manor in Deathly Hallows, he could apparate directly into the dungeon because it was not Hogwarts. Yet when the trio later needed to escape from danger within the castle, they had to rely on secret passages or the help of others. The inability to simply vanish forced them into paths that revealed character and required courage. The ban, frustrating though it was, served narrative as well as practical purpose. It kept Hogwarts a place where journeys mattered, where effort and choice determined survival, not the snap of fingers. In the end, the prohibition on apparition is more than a defensive spell. It is a window into the nature of Hogwarts itself. A fortress, a sanctuary, a puzzle, and perhaps even a living being, the castle stands apart from the rest of the wizarding world. Its refusal to allow instant travel speaks of ancient caution, protective love, and a will of its own. Help will always be given at Hogwarts to those who ask for it, Dumbledore said, and perhaps the greatest help it ever gave was the stubborn, enduring shield that made the castle unassailable by magic's fastest trick. To ask why one cannot operate in Hogwarts is to ask what Hogwarts is, and the answer may be something alive, something ancient, something that insists on protecting its children by denying them the easy way out. Number 21. How do magical creatures come into existence? The question of where magical creatures truly come from lingers like a shadow over the Harry Potter universe. Readers are introduced to them as though they have always existed, simply part of the background tapestry of the wizarding world. Hagrid leads Harry to Buckbeak in Prisoner of Azkaban, and the creature seems as natural as a horse or an eagle, despite its hybrid form. Yet when one pauses and examines carefully, the presence of such beings raises troubling mysteries. Biology and evolution, as understood in the non-magical world, cannot easily explain the existence of a creature with the body of a horse and the wings and head of a bird of prey. This strangeness demands deeper consideration, and the suspicion arises that many of these creatures may not have been products of nature at all, but rather the legacy of forgotten magical experiments. Take the case of Acromantulus, the massive spiders that first terrify readers in Chamber of Secrets. Aragog, Hagrid's monstrous companion, reveals that his species can communicate fluently with humans, organize societies, and sustain themselves in colonies hidden in dark forests. These qualities point to something unnatural. J.K. Rowling herself wrote that acromantulas were bred by wizards, specifically designed to guard treasure or serve as protectors. Their enormous size and venomous capacity suggest deliberate enhancement far beyond what nature would allow. If true, these terrifying spiders are not evolutionary accidents, but constructed weapons abandoned after they proved too dangerous to control. The Forbidden Forest is not simply a natural habitat, but in this reading, a living museum of failed magical experiments. The centaurs, noble and aloof, present an even stranger mystery. Their very form raises the question of whether they could ever be the product of ordinary reproduction. Half human and half horse, they display wisdom, language, and advanced astronomical knowledge. In Order of the Phoenix, Ferenczi explains to Harry that we watch the skies for what is written there, displaying the intellectual depth of a philosopher. Such beings seem almost deliberately designed to embody the paradox of instinct and intellect, beast and man in one body. Ancient legends outside the Harry Potter universe also speak of centaurs, but within the magical one's world, it is plausible that they were born of archaic magical experimentation, sorcerers attempting to merge human intelligence with animal strength. Whether this was done for curiosity, ambition, or darker purposes is unclear, but their existence stands as testimony to a kind of primordial fusion no natural law could justify. Dragons, so central to wizarding culture that their parts fill potion cupboards and their eggs are traded on the black market, pose another impossible question. In Goblet of Fire, Harry faces a Hungarian horntail, a creature both majestic and catastrophic, capable of flight while weighing tons, breathing fire from lungs that should not withstand such heat. Biologists in the non-magical world could never accept their existence, for the metabolic impossibilities alone would break every rule of nature. The simplest explanation is that dragons, like acromantulas, were engineered, perhaps by early magical civilizations that have since vanished. Some scholars within the wizarding world argue that dragons may have been designed as the ultimate test of bravery, guardians of treasure and secrets. The fact that they can interbreed across species lines, producing hybrids like the horntail and Welsh green, implies an artificial origin, engineered traits woven together by magic itself. Not all magical creatures are violent or terrifying, but their origins remain just as mysterious. Take the house elves. Dobby, Creature, and Winky are not hybrids of man and beast, yet their physiology, magical abilities, and social role within wizarding society demand explanation. These beings possess powerful magic unconnected to wands, able to apparate in and out of places where skilled wizards cannot. They were clearly not created by natural forces, for their power is uniquely adapted to servitude. It seems almost certain they were deliberately shaped, bound into existence by enchantments intended to provide magical households with loyal and capable helpers. If so, then the enslavement of elves is not merely cultural, but hardwired into their very origin, a deeply unsettling legacy of magical bioengineering. One must also consider the goblins, beings who occupy a distinct cultural and political space within wizarding society. Gringotts Bank, with its deep vaults and deadly enchantments, reveals just how advanced goblin craft has become. In Deathly Hallows, Griphook tells Harry, "The sword is Gryffindor's. It was made by goblins. It belongs to goblins," asserting not just ownership, but cultural identity. Yet their small stature, elongated fingers, and affinity for metals are oddly specific. Could goblins too have been the outcome of an ancient experiment, perhaps created to master crafts that wizards could not? Unlike house elves, they resisted servitude, shaping their own place in history. Their rebellious independence hints at an origin beyond wizard control, but the question remains, were they born naturally, or were they molded by hands long forgotten? Perhaps the most disturbing theory is that many magical creatures represent attempts by wizards to play God. The laws of magic in the Harry Potter world are never fully explained, but we know that spells can alter bodies, create lifelike entities, and bend reality itself. In Philosopher's Stone, Dumbledore tells Harry, "To the well-organized mind, death is but the next great adventure," reminding readers that wizards often challenge the natural order. If they can produce Horcruxes, splitting the soul to cling to immortality, then surely ancient sorcerers could merge. Creatures bend DNA-like strands of magical essence and shape beings that became the magical fauna we see. The creatures that populate Hogwarts grounds may therefore be the echoes of these reckless acts, dangerous reminders of the costs of tampering with creation. One might argue, however, that not all magical beasts were born from human meddling. The Phoenix, for example, resists the narrative of experimentation. Fawkes, Dumbledore's loyal companion, embodies purity, rebirth, and divine symbolism. In Chamber of Secrets, he arrives in the chamber at the exact moment Harry needs him most, bringing healing tears and courage. Such a creature does not feel manufactured, but rather primordial, a magical constant that predates wizardry. Perhaps some creatures are indeed native to the magical fabric of the world, existing independently of human ambition. If so, the universe of Harry Potter contains both engineered monsters and spiritual guardians, each revealing different facets of magic itself. Still, the suspicion persists that hybrid creatures, those whose forms defy nature's logic, bear the fingerprints of invention. The hippogriff, for example, is not a seamless blend of eagle and horse, but a creature with incongruous parts stitched together by enchantment. In myth, the hippogriff was said to be impossible, for the eagle and horse were enemies. Yet here it exists, proud and temperamental, bowing only to those who show respect. Buckbeak's near execution in Prisoner of Azkaban highlights the dangers of misunderstanding such hybrids. They may not be mistakes, but they are volatile, born of a logic foreign to nature. The Thestrals, skeletal winged horses visible only to those who have witnessed death, raise another troubling question. Their appearance seems symbolic, yet they are undeniably real, used to draw the Hogwarts carriages. If they were natural creatures, why would their visibility hinge on human perception of mortality? It is as if they were designed to embody the relationship between death and life, forcing those who see them to confront loss. The possibility exists that they were conjured by ancient necromantic rituals, created not to guard treasure, but to remind wizards of mortality. In this way, creatures are not merely biological oddities, but living allegories, shaped by magic into physical form. The world of Harry Potter often hints at forgotten ages, times when magic was wilder and more dangerous. Beasts like the basilisk hidden in the Chamber of Secrets prove this point. Salazar Slytherin bred, or at least controlled one, an act that required immense magical power. Its ability to kill with a glance and live for centuries suggests deliberate design, not natural occurrence. Such beings are weapons disguised as animals, remnants of wars long past. If one school founder could harbor such a creature, what else might have been created and left behind in ruins, caves, and forests waiting to be rediscovered? The moral implications of these theories are profound. If magical creatures were once human projects, then every interaction with them is an encounter with wizarding history's sins. Hagrid, in his love of dangerous beasts, may be unconsciously drawn to the remnants of these ancient experiments, fascinated by what others fear. His belief that there's not a creature in the world that deserves it more than Buckbeak shows his compassion, but it also hides the darker truth that such creatures may have been shaped through cruelty and ambition. To love them is to embrace the unintended consequences of wizard arrogance. There is also the question of secrecy. The Ministry of Magic tightly controls dangerous creatures, issuing licenses and outlawing breeding. In Order of the Phoenix, the Department for the Regulation and Control of Magical Creatures is described as a vast bureaucracy. Perhaps this obsession with control is not merely about safety, but about hiding the true origins of these beings. To reveal that wizards themselves created horrors like acromantulas or basilisks would destabilize society. The ministry's silence may therefore be deliberate, maintaining the illusion that magical beasts are simply part of nature rather than human responsibility. Ultimately, the magical creatures of Harry Potter serve as mirrors, reflecting the ambitions and fears of wizards themselves. Whether they were born of natural magic or conjured by reckless experimentation, they embody the boundary between wonder and terror. To encounter them is to face both the beauty and the consequences of magic. Readers may never know for certain how they came to be, but the unsettling possibility remains. The wizarding world is haunted not just by its ghosts and dark wizards, but by the living, breathing outcomes of experiments no one dares to confess. Number 22. Why doesn't anyone use the Mirror of Erised? The Mirror of Erised remains one of the most haunting magical objects in the Harry Potter universe, precisely because it carries with it a paradox. It is at once simple and infinitely complex. It shows not what was, nor what will be, but what the heart desires most. In Harry Potter and the Philosopher's Stone, Rowling describes it with chilling elegance. The happiest man on earth would look into the mirror and see only himself exactly as he is. That sentence alone reveals both its beauty and its curse. A magical object that does not bend time, does not unleash violence, and does not tempt with power still holds the ability to destroy the soul by locking it in longing. And yet after the first book, the mirror almost vanishes from the story. The question that has puzzled readers for decades is, why did no one attempt to use it again? Why does this artifact of such dangerous brilliance vanish from the narrative as though its very existence had to be forgotten? When Harry first stumbles upon the mirror, the scene is drenched in loneliness. It is Christmas night, the castle is cold, and he is more isolated than ever, surrounded by people who belong to families while he feels he has none. When he looks into the glass, he does not see power nor riches, but his parents standing beside him, smiling. Rowling describes his gaze as hungry to absorb every detail of them. This is the essence of the mirror's cruelty. It gives what the heart craves most, but it does so in the form of an illusion, a fragile ghost. For Harry, who never knew his parents, it became an almost intoxicating drug. He sneaks back night after night, compelled, unable to let go of the vision. The mirror offers a paradise that can never be grasped, and yet it feels more real than the world outside. Already here lies the danger. If left unchecked, Harry might have lost himself in it, and it is precisely Dumbledore who steps in and removes it. Dumbledore's explanation is simple, and yet it leaves behind even more questions. He tells Harry it does not do to dwell on dreams and forget to live. This quote is one of the most famous lines of the series, a reminder that reality, however harsh, is the only ground upon which life can stand. But it also exposes a contradiction. If Dumbledore truly believed in the peril of the mirror, why was it left in the school in the first place, where curious students could stumble upon it? The argument could be made that the headmaster is whimsical, that he enjoys placing riddles and tests in the path of students. But the danger here is not a riddle. The danger is psychological annihilation. If Harry, a boy of strong character, was already on the brink of obsession, what would it do to someone weaker, someone like Colin Creevey, or perhaps even Draco Malfoy, whose desire for power and status might have consumed him entirely? The strangeness deepens when we remember that the mirror was not simply abandoned in a forgotten classroom. It was deliberately used as part of the final protection for the Philosopher's Stone. This decision reframes the entire artifact. Dumbledore was not just storing the mirror, he was weaponizing it. The mirror was charmed so that only someone who sought the stone, not for use, but for possession alone, could obtain it. In that moment, it became something more than an object of desire. It became a judge of character. And yet this raises another problem. If the mirror can be enchanted to measure intent, why was it never used again in the series as a tool for discerning motives? Imagine how powerful it could have been in times of war. The Order of the Phoenix could have placed new recruits before it to see what they truly wanted. The Ministry of Magic, so easily corrupted, could have used it to expose traitors. And yet the mirror vanishes as though swallowed by the shadows of narrative silence. One theory that has haunted fans is that the mirror is too dangerous to be used as any kind of systematic tool. Even in the stone's protection, the enchantment placed upon it required the wisdom and magical power of Dumbledore himself, and perhaps even then it was precarious. To expose people to their deepest desires is to expose them to madness. Imagine Voldemort standing before it. What would he see? Likely not power alone, but perhaps his twisted vision of immortality, a universe without death. Would such a vision not shatter the sanity of those who saw it? To build a political or military system upon the revelations of such a device might be to invite collapse. For the moment, a person knows their deepest desire has been revealed, their mind is destabilized. And magic, like desire, has consequences. Another angle lies in the very construction of the mirror. Unlike the pensive, which allows for objective exploration of memories, the mirror of Erised provides no truth beyond the desire it reveals. It cannot be used to prove guilt, nor to expose lies. For example, when Snape is suspected of working against the Order, the mirror could have been placed before him. But what if it showed only Lily Potter alive, smiling at him? Would that prove his loyalty? or would it only deepen the ambiguity of his heart? The mirror does not reveal motives in action, only in longing. And longing is not truth. It is a phantom, as deceptive as it is illuminating. Thus, as a legal or political tool, it is almost useless. Still, the mystery remains. Why did Dumbledore choose to leave it in the school in the first place? He could have destroyed it or hidden it in the Department of Mysteries, where artifacts of overwhelming power are often stored. The fact that it stayed in Hogwarts suggests that Dumbledore saw in it not merely a threat, but a lesson. Harry's encounter with the mirror shapes him profoundly. It teaches him that desire can consume, that dreams can destroy. This lesson stays with him through the series. When he later faces the Resurrection Stone, he has already been trained to recognize the peril. Of illusions of the dead, without the mirror, perhaps Harry would have succumbed to the stone's seduction. Perhaps he would have chosen to dwell with shadows instead of accepting mortality. In this sense, the mirror is not just an artifact, it is a silent teacher. The darker possibility is that the mirror was never entirely under Dumbledore's control. Consider the phrasing Rowling uses when describing it. Irised stra eru oit ube kafru oit on voxi. It is a riddle, yes, but also a spell. To reverse the letters is to uncover its meaning, but what if the reversal itself is a warning? The mirror may not be an invention of Hogwarts, but something older, something primal. In that case, Dumbledore did not simply place it in the school, but found it there, inherited from a deeper past. If this is true, then the disappearance of the mirror after the first book is not negligence, but deliberate silence. To speak of it again would be to awaken forces too perilous to name. There is also the question of why Voldemort himself never sought it out. He, more than anyone, should have been obsessed with knowing his own deepest desire, and yet he does not. This could suggest that the Dark Lord already knew what it would show him, and that he feared it. For a man who built his life upon denying mortality, to gaze into a mirror that might reveal his human longing for family, or perhaps even redemption, would be unbearable. It would expose the weakness he most wanted to conceal. Thus the mirror may have been left untouched because even the darkest wizards recognized its terror. The tragedy is that the mirror reveals not only the flaws of individuals, but the flaws of humanity. Harry longs for parents, Ron longs for glory, and perhaps Hermione would have longed for acceptance. Each desire is different, yet each exposes the vulnerability of the heart. To build a world upon such truths would be impossible, and perhaps this is why Rowling herself set the mirror aside. To reintroduce it would be to open a wound in every character, to reveal depths of pain that the story could not resolve. In literature, as in magic, some objects are too powerful to be wielded twice. And yet there remains a haunting aftertaste. In the final book, as Harry prepares for his death, he walks into the Forbidden Forest to face Voldemort. He does so without illusions, without the comfort of shadows. He carries with him the Resurrection Stone, but uses it only for strength, not for escape. And in that moment, one cannot help but think of the mirror. Had the mirror been present, what would Harry have seen? Likely the same vision of his parents, his loved ones, all standing beside him. The difference now is that he would have looked, smiled, and walked away. The mirror had already done its work. It had taught him how to live and how to die. In the end, the silence of the mirror in the later books may not be absence at all. It may be presence in disguise. The lessons it carved into Harry's heart resonate throughout the saga. When he chooses life over illusion, action over longing, sacrifice over fantasy, he is echoing the wisdom he first learned in front of that strange glass. Thus, the mirror does not need to return. Its reflection lingers, invisible, behind every choice he makes. And perhaps that is the greatest magic of all. Number 23. Why don't wizards use magic against aging? The image of Dumbledore standing in his office, hands clasped behind his back, long silver beard flowing like a river of wisdom, is one of the most powerful reminders that even the greatest wizards cannot resist time. His brilliance, his unmatched magical knowledge, and his command over spells that ordinary witches and wizards could not even comprehend, none of it shielded him from old age. Rowling describes him as an old man with long hair and beard, half-moon glasses perched on his crooked nose, and this description remains consistent from Harry's first year to his last. If magic could conquer aging, surely Dumbledore, a man who had access to knowledge in the deepest archives of the wizarding world, would have used it. But the truth is that he aged as naturally as any other mortal, his body slowly betraying his vast mind. This is not a sign of weakness, rather it reveals a profound limitation built into the very fabric of magical existence. It is striking that the wizarding world, capable of curing broken bones overnight with Scale Grow, cannot erase wrinkles or restore the vitality of youth. Madame Pomfrey's hospital wing is full of miraculous recoveries, Harry's shattered arm healed in less than a day, Ron's poisoning treated within minutes, and countless injuries undone as if they had never happened. Yet none of the patients in St. Mungo's walk away with renewed youth. The elderly witches and wizards remain bent-backed and frail, even though their ailments are kept in check by magic. There is a telling moment when Molly Weasley speaks about her aging brothers Fabian and Gideon Prewett, whose strength in battle did not save them from death. The inevitability of decline is always present, whispering behind the wonders of magical medicine. The case of Nicolas Flamel is the most glaring exception and simultaneously the most compelling evidence of a deeper law. Flamel, the legendary alchemist, lived for over 600 years thanks to the elixir of life produced by the Philosopher's Stone. His longevity, however, did not become a model for wizarding society. Instead, it was regarded almost with reverence and fear. When Dumbledore explains in Philosopher's Stone that Flamel and his wife would die, wouldn't they? They have enough elixir stored to set their affairs in order, then yes, they will die. It reveals that even this most extraordinary of wizards chose to surrender immortality. The stone was destroyed, not preserved. If endless life were desirable and safe, why would a man of such immense knowledge agree to let go of it? Clearly, something within the nature of magic, or perhaps the human soul itself, resists eternal extension. One might argue that Voldemort's obsession with immortality demonstrates the dangers of trying to bend this unwritten law. His creation of Horcruxes was a violent, unnatural tearing of the soul. He shed his humanity, Dumbledore says in Half-Blood Prince, to keep himself alive. The price of attempting to outwit death was corruption, monstrosity, and a fate worse than dying. Voldemort's appearance itself became a testament to the unnaturalness of his quest, snake-like features, red eyes, and a body barely human. The message is clear. Magic that tries to deny aging and death entirely veers into the darkest, most destructive paths. It is not merely frowned upon, it is punished by the very forces that govern existence. Consider also the role of wands and magical energy. Wizards grow in power as they age, but their physical stamina weakens. The elderly Bathilda Bagshot, once a respected historian, is depicted as frail and confused before her death. Magic sustained her reputation, but not her body. Dumbledore himself was weakened in his final year, his hand cursed, blackened by the Horcrux ring, his strength failing as he relied more heavily on Harry to act. It is as though magic flourishes in tandem with wisdom, but recoils from the arrogance of trying to halt bodily decay. The older a wizard becomes, the more magic bends toward teaching and guiding rather than fighting nature. One cannot forget the cautionary tale of Gellert Grindelwald. Though immensely powerful, Grindelwald aged in prison, his hair turning white, his body withering under the weight of time. By the time Voldemort confronted him in Deathly Hallows, he was frail, skeletal, but his eyes still burned with inner power. Grindelwald had not sought Horcruxes, nor had he relied on elixirs. He aged naturally, a prisoner of both fate and his choices, and in that final moment he chose defiance rather than surrendering the truth he carried. Even the darkest revolutionaries, it seems, cannot bargain with the universal law of aging.